Hi guys, today we're going to do the Excel Chapter 1 guided project. So we have moved on now from Word into Excel. It's a whole different can of worms that we're opening up here. Excel is a lot different than Word. There are some of the same formatting processes, properties and stuff, but Excel is a spreadsheet, Word is a document generation, or a document program. So there are some definite differences. Excel was created just as that, as a spreadsheet to be able to do calculations and formulas and things like that for accounting and financial things. And it's just grown from there. Excel is formatted, as you can see here, in your guided, in your first guided project, by columns and rows. Columns are always identified by letters. Rows are always identified by numbers. And the cell that you're looking for is identified by the column and then the row number. So this cell is C5. That's how you identify it. Now, when you're reading instructions on what to do, sometimes it'll give you a range of cells to choose. And in that case, a range is going to have a cell reference with a colon and then another cell reference. That means select everything. So if it says, or everything in that range, so if it says A4 colon H4, you're going to select A4 through H4 and select everything in between. Now if it says select A4 comma H4, you're going to select A4, hold down your control key, and select H4. So you're only selecting those two cells, not everything in between. So that's kind of the difference. Make sure that you are doing the right thing based on the reference that it is giving you. Okay, we're going to start step 2. It says delete row 8. So here's row 8. You'll see it has incomplete sales data because they took the house off the market. To select the row, you're just going to hover over the row numbers and select row 8. You'll notice how my cursor changes to that right arrow, and you'll see that it highlights that entire row. Right click and say delete, and it'll delete that row for you. Okay, then we're going to type in 2018-001 in cell A5. So 2018-001. Whoops, I forgot the dash. Okay, then we're going to copy this all the way down to A12. Now, to copy or to autofill a formula or other cells, you're going to select right here this, let me pull up my pen marker. Okay, you're going to, it's not going to show me now, right here in the corner, it's going to have that dark, right there, that box at the bottom right hand corner of the cell. That is your drag box, and it copies or autofills the contents. So it's different than moving it. If you wanted to move it, you're going to hover over any one of the edges, not the corners, but the edges. And you'll see how my cursor changes to the 4 arrows, and then you can move that cell wherever you happen to want it to go. But to copy it, I'm going to come over, and as I hover over that box in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see how my cursor changes to this plus sign without the arrows. So I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to drag it down. And you'll notice it's incrementing. Here it says 2018-8. It's incrementing as I go down. That is a default feature of Excel. When you have numbers and you drag numbers down, it's going to increment those numbers for you because it's assuming that you don't want the same number in there. And that's what we want it to do. We want it to increment. Okay. Then we're going to, step 4, enter a formula in cell C5. So in cell C5, we're going to enter in a formula. And we're going to calculate the number of days that the house was on the market. So that is the date sold minus the date listed. That's how you calculate the number of days. because date sold and date listed is formatted as a date, it knows to calculate those days. All formulas, so there's a difference between formulas and functions, and we won't really get into functions in chapter 1. We'll start that in chapter 2. But a formula is going to be something that you type in, in referencing cells. So you're going to actually create the mathematical statement. So it would be like cell A1 plus cell A2. And that is a formula, okay? A function is a built-in function in Excel, and it's always going to start with a word, and it's going to have parentheses that allows you to pass it parameters, and we will get to that in chapter 2. All formulas and functions in Excel start with an equal sign. The equal sign is what tells Excel that this is something to be calculated. I need to do something on this field that's not just text. Everything else is just text. But if you put in an equal sign, then Excel says, oh, I need to perform an action on this cell based on this formula or function. So if I were to just put in here C5, or not C5, but E5 minus D5, it just sees it as text. It's just text. It's not going to do anything. If we wanted to actually calculate, I'm going to put an equal sign in there. And now you can see those are cell references. The blue is E5, the red is D5. So if I hit enter there, now it actually does a calculation. Okay, so I'm going to start this over. I'm going to do an equal sign. And I want, the easiest way to do this is you can type in those cell references just like I did. It doesn't make a difference. A lot of times, though, it's easier to just point and click than it is to type, especially if you don't like moving your fingers all over the keyboard to go between letters and numbers and everything else. So sometimes it's just easier to point and click. And so I want to take the date sold, so I'm going to click on E5, and you'll notice it puts E5 in there. And then I'm going to hit the minus sign, and I'm going to say D5. So I'm subtracting the date that it was listed from the date that it was sold. So the greater date, which is date sold, minus the lesser date, the date listed, gives me the number of days that it was on the market. And if I hit enter, I get that calculation. Now I want to copy this formula down to these other cells. Do the same thing as we did with the property ID, and you hover over that box there and you click and you drag down. And then it does the calculation. You're like, wait a minute, how does it do that calculation? So when we selected these cells, this is called relative referencing. And there are multiple types of referencing in Excel that we will get into. We've got relative, absolute, mixed, and structured referencing that we will deal with throughout the 4 Excel chapters. Right now, we're just doing relative referencing. What relative referencing means is that if I move or copy this formula, it's going to adjust these cell references based on how many rows or columns I copy that formula. Okay, so in our instance, we copied this formula 1 cell down into row 6. So it's going to change these 5s to 6s. It's going to do that automatically for us. And if you look and put your cursor in cell C6, you'll see it changed it to E6 and D6. That's one of the very nice and powerful things of Excel, is that it does this for you. So you don't have to go in there and change all of those cell references every time you copy a new formula. If I were to move this formula to the left or the right, it would adjust my column reference based on which direction I moved it. Okay, so that is what relative referencing means. It means that formula, those cell references, are going to change relative to where I move it or where I copy it. And so remember that when you're doing these formulas. Okay, so we did step 4, and that we created the formula and we copied it. But we also want to format this with a number format. So we see here it looks like numbers to us, okay? But to Excel, it's general. It's basically what general says is that if it's a number format, it's a number. If it's a text, it might be text. There's no real rhyme or reason to what it's going to format. It's just there. Well, we want to actually format it as a number. So we're going to say number, but we want 0 decimal places. So here under your number formatting, these are your decimal place adjustments. This increases your decimal, this decreases your decimal. Since we want to go from 2 decimal places to 0, we're going to decrease. So if we hit that, you'll see that it removes those decimal places. Okay, then step 5, format the list prices and the sold prices in F5 through G12. So notice it says F5 colon G12. That means select A5 or F5 through G12. So you're going to select all of those cells. And we're going to change that to an accounting format, which you can click the down arrow and say accounting, or you can hit this down arrow. This down arrow, you notice as I hover over it, is accounting. There is a difference between accounting and currency. They look different and they're formatted different. So do not think that just because you've got a dollar sign in there means that it's accounting. It's not. It could be currency, but we want it to be accounting format. So that's what we're going to click. And then again, we want 0 decimal places. The biggest difference between accounting and currency is here under accounting, you're going to notice that the space is between the dollar signs. If I go to currency, it keeps those dollar signs right next to the numbers. Okay, so those are the two differences, or the biggest difference between accounting and currency. So make sure it's set as accounting. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to enter a formula in cell H5 that calculates the sale price percentage of the list price for the first house. Okay, so how do we calculate a percentage? So we're going to take the price that it was sold for and we're going to divide it by the price that it was listed for, and that's going to give us a percentage. What's the percentage that you sold it for what it was listed? You know, how much of a discount did you give your buyers? So again, all formulas and functions start with an equal sign, and we're going to do sold price, and we're going to divide it by the list price. So it should be G5 divided by F5, and you hit enter. Now we're going to drag this formula down so that it does the same thing for all of our rows, and it gave us in our instructions that the second house, the sales percentage of the list price should be 0.7999, and it is. So that's telling us we calculated it properly. So we copy the formula all the way down, and then we are going to format this as a percentage, and we want 2 decimal places. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to wrap the headings in the range A4 through H4. So again, we want the whole range, so it's A4 through H4, and we're going to do this wrap text. What that's going to do is you'll notice here how it kind of extends past the cell. If we do wrap text, it lets it wrap in that cell so that your cell can be, it doesn't have to be as wide. Okay, step 9. It says insert a new column between the date sold and list priced columns. So date sold and list price. So I'm going to select list price. So I'm going to select F4 through F12. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to say insert. And then it says, do you want to shift the cells right, down, or whatever? I want to shift the cells right. So I'm going to say okay there. And then I'm going to take days on market, so I'm going to take C4 through C12, and I want to move it here to this column here. And so remember, moving is different than copying. Copying, you take this corner. Moving, you're going to take an edge. So I'm going to click on an edge, and I'm going to drag it over and put it there. And now we've got days on market over here. Then I'm going to take C4 through C12, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to say delete, and you're going to shift your cells left. So basically we just moved this column from over here to over here so that it makes a little bit more sense because it kind of makes more sense to have date listed, date sold, and then the days on the market instead of having the days on the market first. Okay. Step 10. It says edit the list date of 41 Chestnut Circle. So 41 Chestnut Circle, instead of being 222, we're going to change that to 422. Okay, and you'll notice that automatically changed this formula. Why? Because we're referencing this cell. So when this data in this cell changes, it's automatically going to recalculate that formula to give you the right numbers. Okay, then we're going to edit the list price of the house on Amsterdam Drive, which is on row 5. We're going to change the list price to $355,000. So $355,000 and hit enter. And you'll notice this percentage changed because that's a formula based on what's in this cell. So since we changed the value in this cell, this automatically gets changed. Okay, so we're going to select the property rows, which are rows 5 through 12. So we're going to do 5 through 12. And we're going to change the row height to 25. So row height is most easily found by right-clicking on the rows that are selected and say row height. And then your little dialog box comes up and you can say 25. And now it's going to update all of those rows are now going to be a height of 25. Okay, then we're going to apply the all border style to the range A4 through H12. So I'm going to take A4 and I'm going to select all the way through H12 and I'm going to apply all borders. So here's your border button. It looks just like it did in Word. Hit the down arrow and I'm going to select all borders. And that's going to put a dark line between all of my cells. Okay, then we're going to apply align right and increase the indent 2 times on the days of market field results in E5 through E12. So E5 through E12, I'm going to do I want to align right. So that's a bottom align. We don't want we want bottom align, but we want to align right. So I'm going to say align right, and I'm going to increase my indent 2 times. Okay. Okay, step 14. Set the days on market column width to 9. So I'm going to select column E, which is our days on market column, and I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to say column width, and I'm going to set it to 9. And then it says to set the list price and sold price columns, so that's F and G, and we're going to change that column width to 11.86. Okay, now we want to apply 120% scaling. So that's different. This down here is your zoom, and it zooms in and out on the page, but it does not affect how it's printed on the page. When it says 120% scaling, it means I want you to scale it on the page to 120% of its original size. So we're going to go to page layout, and the easiest way to do this is just to click on this. Well, you can do this page setup and click here, but look right here is scale to fit, and right now it says 100%, and you can increase to say 120. Okay. Okay, next we're going to step 16, delete the properties tab. So down here where it says properties, I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to say delete. Are you sure you want to do it? Yes, I do. And then we're going to add another sheet. We're going to right click on it and say rename, and we're going to call it formulas. Okay. Then what we want to do is we want to select everything on this page, and we're going to copy it to the formulas page, and then we're going to display all the formulas. So the select all feature, similar to Word, is you can do Control A and it will select everything. You can also hit this top corner right here between the columns and the rows, and it will select everything. That is the select all feature. Okay, and then I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to go to formulas and I'm going to paste it. And you'll see it pastes everything with the row heights and the column widths and all that type of good stuff. Okay, step 18, we're going to hide the date list and the date sold columns. So I'm going to select column C and column D. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say hide. Okay, you'll notice you've got your columns don't change in referencing. It's still B and E. It's because we didn't delete the columns. We hid them. And you can see that there is, you know, a space right there between your markers. And that's telling me I've got hidden cells or hidden columns. Okay, we are going to display the cell formulas. And on your Formulas tab, there's a button here that says Show Formulas. So if we click that, now it's going to show us all of our formulas. So these formulas that we calculated, that we entered in, you're going to see what their actual cell references are. So instead of seeing the results of the formula, you get to see the formula itself. And this is really important, especially when we get into absolute referencing. If your formula is not showing up the way you think it should, then you can check the formulas easy by doing this. And then you can modify the formulas as well. Okay. It says to set options to print the grid lines. So again, we're going to go to page layout. Here's your sheet options. We're going to print grid lines and we're going to print headings. Okay, so there's our sheet options to print those. And then we're going to set the column width for column E. So I'm going to right click on E and say column width. And we're going to change that to 6.86. And then for column H, we're going to change that to 6. Okay, perfect. Now we're going to group the two worksheets. So what does it mean to group the two worksheets? So when you group two worksheets, basically what that means is that when you change formatting or text on one sheet, it's going to change that on the other sheet as well. So if you want to set both sheets for landscape, or if you want to change the margins for both sheets, then you can select both sheets at one time and do it one time. Instead of, like if you had 10 sheets, instead of having to go through each one of those sheets and setting those options, you can do it one time instead of 10 times. So to group your worksheets, you're going to you've got one worksheet selected. You're going to hold down the Shift key and you're going to click the next sheet. And you'll notice they're both now bolded and they're white. That's telling us that they're grouped. So from here, we're going to select a landscape orientation. Okay, and then we're going to center the page horizontally and vertically between the margins. So we're going to click here on this page setup dialog box launcher. If we go to margins, you'll see here center on page. You have the option to do horizontally and vertically. So make sure that those are checked and say OK. Now it says with both worksheets still grouped, we're going to insert a header and a footer. The easiest way to do that, again, is on this page setup, and I should have left it open. There's a header and footer tab. We're going to click on Custom Footer, and on the left section, we're going to say Exploring Series. In the center section, we're going to put the sheet name. So these buttons here are going to give you tags. So these tags is going to tell Excel what to put in it. And for each sheet, we want the sheet name, but we want each, if we've got 5 sheets, we don't want the same thing on all 5 sheets. We want that particular sheet name on there. So it's got this @ tab. Now this is a tag that you can type in. Unlike Word with our mail merge, we couldn't type that in, but this we could. But at the same time, it's easier just to click the button. And then in the right section, we want the file name code. So here is your file name. And say OK, and then say OK. And then you can save your workbook and you're good to go. I would ungroup your worksheets first. Just right click on them and say ungroup. That way, if you've made any mistakes and you've got to come back and fix it, you're not making changes everywhere, because that could be bad. Although since these are the same, if you have to change a formula because you did it wrong, you need to have that formula changed on both. So it might be a good idea to have it grouped. It's really entirely up to you. And then save it and submit it, and you're good to go. Thank y'all very much. Please let me know if you have any questions or problems, and I will talk to you for Excel Chapter 2. Have a great day.